This week on the agenda, the economics of loneliness. In a world more interconnected than ever, what's the real cost of being alone? One in 6 people around the world now say they feel lonely. The World Health Organization has termed loneliness a global health risk, saying the lonely are 30% more likely to die young, similar to the risk of smoking or obesity. And it's taking a huge economic toll too. The cost to the US alone is estimated at $406 billion. So why is this happening in the internet age of social media? And what can be done to address the problem? With me now are Elyakim Kislev from the School of Public Policy and Governance at the Hebrew University, and Danny Dorling, Professor at Oxford University School of Geography and the Environment. Thank you both for coming on the agenda. Elyakim, let's start with you. Why are we in the midst of a global loneliness crisis?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure we're in a crisis per se. But loneliness is really prominent problem around the world, and I think some social forces like individualism, capitalism, and also investment in career and education take people in more invested. Make people more invested in their career, in their work, in their jobs, and they pull away from social activities and family connections.
Danny, how does loneliness affect public health and the economy and all of those things?
It has an effect on everything. It's rising slowly. In a way, that's why it's not a crisis, because it's been going on and on for decades, this rise. And it's connected to us in general having fewer and fewer children, starting families later. So we spend more time on our own and more time with less people. At the most extreme in Britain, increased being alone. Being alone and lonely isn't necessarily the same thing. You can be lonely and live with other people, but it's harder to avoid being lonely if you live on your own. At the extreme, we're seeing rising numbers of people who die and their body's not found till later. So they clearly had quite a lonely existence before death, and there wasn't somebody else keeping an eye on them. One crude way of thinking about it is that most men, because most elderly men live with an elderly woman, they have somebody looking after them and they're less lonely. But because women live longer than men, women can easier end up being widows and on their own. And our societies are designed for us living shorter lives.
Yeah.
So we now have people living in family houses decades long after they had a family. We haven't designed our societies for the length of life we live, or how our households are now smaller. This all affects our health. It means we don't look after ourselves as well if we're not feeling happy with ourselves. And it affects the economy, because when you're feeling happy, it's so much easier to do a good job. When you're not feeling happy, it isn't. Work, of course, is one of the key ways in which people avoid loneliness. You know, work isn't just good because it's good for the economy or money. Work is one of the key ways in which we socialise with other people. But when you have a huge increase in being able to work from home and work remotely, work suddenly stops being quite as useful a thing as it was for socialising and for avoiding loneliness.
But as Danny said, Elyakim, loneliness, it doesn't mean the same to everyone. It means different things to different people. And it's not just about getting old and ageing. It's not the same as being single, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So numbers we have, of course, differing between countries. But rule of thumb that we are talking about 30% of married people lonely versus around 40% of single people who are lonely. And if we consider social exclusion and social stigma around singlehood, the two populations are pretty close. And in addition to this fact, we must remember that some people and many people, around 40 to 50% in the Western world, go out of marriage at some point, and then they are lonelier than never married single people over the lifetime. So it's pretty complicated problem. It doesn't really relate to singlehood versus marriage or partnerhood, but more about social activities and investing more in social circles around you.
And Danny, is this a global phenomenon? I get the feeling you're going to say it is, and not just something that is relevant to developed economies.
Yes, but as far as we can tell, it varies. Of course, we only have really good data for rich countries. Rich countries have lots and lots of surveys of people and ask lots of questions. In poorer countries, health surveys tend to be more pragmatic and don't tend to ask questions about how do you feel as much. So I'm trying to avoid generalizing too much, but whenever we get good quality data, we tend to initially be shocked by this. I think we're partly shocked because the kind of people who are looking at the surveys tend to be engaged, and so we're a bit surprised to find how many people are lonely. One thing which shocked me way back in the late 1990s was a survey in Britain which asked people what of significance has happened to them in the last year, and something like 79%, 78% said that nothing has happened to me in the last year of any significance. And that's a sort of sad indictment of the way our societies change. There's a kind of a boredom, a growing boredom with life, not enjoying the kind of things that we maybe used to enjoy as much, because our societies are changing rapidly in what we do, in how we socialize, in our friend groups. We used to be much more local. Now an enormous number of people go away to university, live away from their family. One of the loneliest situations you can be in is to suddenly move to an enormous city, thinking you're going to find lots of exciting people like you. But in fact, cities can be very, very lonely places.
So we've talked a little bit about what loneliness is and the impact it can have on the economy, but there are also some advantages to it. Well, I say that because a whole industry has emerged around connection, around community, and helping people cope with that loneliness. I mean, in New York, you can rent a friend. There are cuddling agencies. So, Elyakim, what's the economic impact of these interventions, if you like, or innovations?
So I will describe it in two directions. One direction is the policy antidote. So some municipalities and some states prepare for tackling loneliness, thinking about communities, thinking about making connections, making platforms for people having connections with each other. So this is the policy direction. But if we're talking about economy per se and markets and products, so I will say there are two layers. One layer is the matchmaking. So Facebook, Tinder, whatever apps and whatever social networks we have, kind of fill in to this and connect with this problem and try to solve it virtually. This is one layer, the layers that we are all familiar with. The second layer and more sophisticated layer is about AI, robotics, and virtual reality. So in this sense, my argument is that three revolutions converge together. So the AI we are all familiar with, is in terms of loneliness, it provides us with some cognitive interaction, whether it's humorous, whether it's romantic gestures, whether it's friendship gestures, This is AI. Virtual reality provides us, and it's really in its initial steps, but it provides us with surroundings, with environment, with sensorial experience around us, and and we'll see how it goes. And robotics, which is, I think, the next step, where Amazon and Tesla and many other startups working toward companionship in the physical realms. It's not the cognitive, it's not the sensorial, it's more physical.
Yeah.
In this sense, people ask themselves, who can help me, who can provide some companionship, some physical companionship when I'm sick or when I'm disabled or when I'm old. And these feels feed in our loneliness and worrying about what will happen when we will be lonely and when we'll be old. So robotics is kind of this stream of solutions.
Danny, what's your take? What do you think about social media and tech and loneliness? Is it going to make things better or worse?
We have to remember that the AI we're currently using is very, very new. I mean, it's the last couple of years that this has begun to become available. And so we've only really got a year of surveys showing what proportion of people at different ages are using AI. It's very high in the under 24s. I partly worry that it allows you, in a sense, to withdraw from society without knowing you've withdrawn. In the past, you might ask a friend or a parent to help you with a letter or an essay, but now you wouldn't bother them because the AI will do it. But you don't have that social interaction because you can pretend you can do it. The thing I suspect, I'm just trying to guess, which is positive about these developments, may be more for older people. And I only say that I'm one of these academics who puts their talks up on YouTube, which, is a bit fruitless, but you do it anyway because you do a talk. But YouTube tells you something about who looks at your talks. And I was shocked to find that the majority of people who watch my talks are over 65. And there was a large number of people in retirement who don't have to go to work, who have a lot of time, and for some reason they are sitting browsing the web. They have a world which the elderly didn't have in the past. So if I had to guess, I would say that we will find these developments are actually a benefit to us in older ages, but it is possible that we will find that young people are withdrawing while being involved. And in universities, the terrible worry is that students use the AI to produce their essays. The AI tells them a summary of a lecture, and they look at it on video. They don't need to do anything, and so you end up being lonelier about what you've achieved and feeling bad about yourself. But this is supposition. This is a very, very new era, and also we must remember that the AI companies are desperately trying to make money. They've invested an enormous amount in this. They're going to start charging for it, and they want people to be hooked. To make their money back, they're going to require people, initially young people who are using it the most, to become dependent on the products that they're actually producing. And that is a concern.
We're talking about the responsibility of the AI companies is another thing. But Danny, let me stick with you, because we do often talk about loneliness as an emotional issue. But just picking up on some of the things you've said, I'm wondering if that would change if governments responded to it like as an infrastructure problem, like they might with transport or with housing, and what needs to happen if that's the case?
Well, as my colleague said, some governments and some municipalities are doing this. So we have a whole series of really interesting natural experiments around the world where we can look at what's working and what isn't. A recent story from my own country in the UK, there's a survey out recently about a huge increase in anxiety and loneliness amongst students. Within the last decade or so, we've had this enormous building of high-rise student accommodation with bedrooms with ensuite toilets, which cost a fortune. I mean, you could just live in your bedroom and not see the other students in your corridor. So looking at something like student accommodation around the world is interesting. In Norway, the government builds student accommodation. It tends to build it for 12 to 20 students in a large house. In Finland, again, the government does it, but it's single occupancy, There are cultural differences to what people want. The young Finnish people seem quite happy with their single occupancy accommodation. But I think where government is directly involved in things like housing is worth thinking about. And the biggest one by far is housing as we age. And it's not because so many of us, our hips, our knees won't work. We don't want to be in houses with stairs. We are going to live longer than our parents lived. And there is this worry about loneliness in old age. If we could adapt our housing so that people want to leave family housing earlier, actually want to leave it, that helps solve the housing problem for people trying to start relationships. Because you might want to be starting a relationship and going through Tinder numerous times, and of course it's an interest of Tinder that you don't stop. But ultimately, actually settling down requires having somewhere where two of you can settle down and start a family. And for that to happen, you can't have housing stock filled up with single, old, often fairly lonely people, often in colder countries finding it quite hard to heat the large house that they live in on their own.
Elyakim, what is your advice for all of us to feel less lonely and more connected?
Well, that's a good question, but I think the solution for policy making, technology, housing, as my colleague mentioned, and the general problem of loneliness is to look at loneliness in the sense that it's subjective. So it's defined by the gap of our expectations to be surrounded and the realities that we experience. And if we will really get into this notion of what is the gap, what every person feels that makes the gap, and in general, municipalities and policymakers and so on, think about the subjective experience and what will make the gap a bit more narrow. It used to be family, nuclear family, and very close connections. Now we need to find systematically and personally about other solutions and other ways to narrow this gap.
Elyakim, Kislev, Danny, Dorling, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Still to come here on the agenda, we'll take a look at how China is looking to win the battle against loneliness.
We are all connected. Across borders, across continents, connected by ideas, a shared humanity. Stay connected.
Welcome back to the agenda. So we've looked at the global implications of the rise in loneliness, but let's focus now on the true scale of the issue in a single country, China, and what the Chinese are doing to tackle the problem. Joining me now is Wang, Associate Professor in Chinese and Asian Studies at the University of New South Wales. Thanks so much for coming on the agenda. How big an issue is loneliness in China?
We don't have perfect data to measure the level of loneliness in China. It is hidden, but it has become increasingly visible nowadays in China, and it's a widespread phenomenon touching all demographics, and it's moving into focus as a very significant challenge for public health.
So why is that? What has changed? What would you say are the key markers?
It has to do with several factors. First, it has to do with China's demographic shift, like the rapid aging population, the declining delayed marriages and fertility, and also a rising childlessness, and also rising divorces, and the growth of singles and the number of singletons who live alone, and the large number of unmarried adults, and especially men in rural areas. So all of these trends, they have significantly weakened China's traditional family structure and kinship ties, and shifting China to a more individualized based and also smaller household unit organized social system. And second, it has to do with China's large-scale rural to urban migration. Because of the mass migration, we see people started to have this fragmented family and community connections. And many migrant workers, they live alone in the cities, and they tend to have very weak ties with others, and difficult for them to build strong and close relationship with others. And also, we know the intensified this competition in education, and also the labor markets. All of these heavy workloads and the 996 work culture, an involuted lifestyle. All of these make people feel socialized. Socializing with others quite difficult, and also building trusting relationship difficult, so they can have that sense of loneliness. Other than these, the COVID-19 pandemic also plays a role in here. The lockdowns and everything reinforce these patterns of social distancing, and also making people vigilant, normalizing this kind of more solitary ways of living and interacting with others. Yeah.
Now, the social media platform Xiaohongshu calls loneliness in China the next big business opportunity. How do you see that happening?
Yes, it's a huge business opportunity. So the singles business, where you call the loneliness business, is booming, manifesting across numerous sectors, targeting different populations with different needs. So like the real estate sector, for example, they've created this smaller size units. Look at the retail sectors. We see this one-person appliances like small kettles and fridges. And the pet industry is also booming. Dogs and cats, small animals. So pet ownership is increasing, and this filled the entire industry chain, from food to medical to funeral services. Entertainment sector, we see the mini karaoke bars and booths, cinema for one person, and restaurants, one person dining, and hot pot, etc. Travel agency developed solo traveling package, etc. So all of these we can see. And also nowadays, most recently AI powered, we can see chatbots and companions and digital companions and other like immersive experiences being created for people, which allowed people to customize, also personalize their needs. And so this trend really is, already driving significant economic activities and boosting innovative products and services and generating billions in revenue, and also lots of job opportunities too.
You mentioned AI. I wonder how central tech and innovation and digital tools are to combating social isolation.
I see these technology, innovation, digital tools, they have become increasingly central, and they've become new infrastructure to help people to mitigate social isolation and also create opportunities for people to build relationships. They become increasingly popular and mainstreaming and increasingly normal and integrated into everyday life. They are very useful indeed, but they can't really replace face-to-face interaction, because I think they only address symptoms rather than tackle the root cause, like the demographic shifts and structural transformations and depressed work culture, etc.
I've been taking a look at China's search engine Baidu, and there are at least 20 apps providing companionship services, including gaming and chatting buddies, like Miqiang Peilu, Yuki and Liu. Is this the future or just a passing trend?
I think these technological tools, they're byproducts of loneliness in China, led by its demographic shifts, broader structural changes. So these apps function as a kind of third space, I think. So they are there for people who really need to use them. They are present and for the future. They are part of everyday life. I think together they're producing a form of networked loneliness, which can potentially mitigate but also reinforce loneliness. So these apps, of course, they continue to evolve. Some will disappear, others been upgraded and replaced. I think there will be, even some of them will no longer exist, but similar apps will emerge and also create this digital and virtual spaces as our society is heading into a more lonely environment.
Tell me a little bit about these pei liao, the paid conversation buddies. How do they work, and have you hired one?
I haven't hired one, but probably I can hire one later. So the paid conversation buddy service that allow people to pay a fee to hire someone to chat with them, usually someone who get trained to talk to people who have very good interpersonal skills, and they could be like college students. Most are young professional students actually, and some are part-time workers. Others are full-time caretakers and anyone else. So the interactions normally are conducted via text or chat over the phone, over the mobile phones, or within any kinds of larger platforms like Taobao or WeChat mini programs. So this is a paid service. So there would be rules, and the conversation, of course, is driven around the needs of the clients, and there are rules there forbidding, restricting certain content, political discussions, or exchanging private information.
Do you think that the rise of the companionship economy is a marker of China's development?
Absolutely. It's a reflection of China's economic modernity and technological innovation and capability. So that's enabled by this widespread smartphone service, digital platforms, and mobile payment systems. All of these are integrated, and I think it marks the economic and technological development of China. But also I want to point to some of the gaps that produced by this rapid modernization, technological innovation, because we could see this process also weakened China's traditional family structure and ties and emotional vulnerability. We could see based on the high demand from people, and also this delayed and foregone partnership, and also very intensified work culture, etc. All of these are symptoms there. So this, at the same time, it shows us the reconfiguration of personal and social relationship in China. And other than that, to a considerable extent, we could see these relationships are commercialized, monetized, and market-driven. So that raises new challenges for development. For example, social challenges, health issues, mental health issues, or even legal issues. So these could be the social costs involved in this process.
Pam Wang, thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Thank you for having me.
You can watch every episode of The Agenda in full on CGTN Europe's YouTube channel. And for exclusive extra content from me, my guests and the rest of the team, don't forget to check out @The Agenda Show on TikTok.
Coming up on a future agenda, a spirit of dialogue will join world leaders and business titans in Davos for the World Economic Forum's annual meeting. But for now, from me, Juliet Mann, and from all the Agenda team here in London, goodbye.